We'll be discussing rural pioneers increasing the creative capital in rural communities. So what I'm going to do is briefly introduce each of our panelists. They'll give a brief presentation about increasing creative capital in rural communities, and then we'll invite Greg back up to have a discussion. You want to pick a seat, any seat? All right. Oh, do we? All right. So Andrew Jacob here is responsible for all regulatory, government relations, compliance, and security programs at CoBank. In that role, he oversees the bank's relationship with elected officials in Washington, D.C., and the bank's regulator, the Farm Credit Administration. In his compliance capacity, Mr. Jacob is charged with oversight of policies, procedures, and controls that ensure the bank continues to conduct business with integrity in accordance with the highest ethical standards. He is a member of CoBank's operating committee and senior leadership team, and he is CoBank's ethics, compliance, and standards of conduct officer. Andrew, would you please share with us how you're increasing the creative capital in rural communities?
I'd be happy to, but I'd like to take a moment first to ask everybody, who's actually ever heard of CoBank? Oh my goodness. Because typically I don't get the hands up. And it wasn't my phone, really. And so my other question is, what do you think CoBank stands for? Because we get confused a lot with CoBiz. But fundamentally, CoBank is a cooperative financial institution. And our role is to actually provide credit to American agriculture, primarily agricultural cooperatives, agribusiness, to rural infrastructure across the spectrum. It would be water and waste systems, rural electrics, and also to rural telephone, broadband, and data centers. We also do exports of agricultural products for the U.S., and we've been around for a really long period of time. We're a $101 billion asset-based bank, and that's our focus, is rural America. The other thing I'd tell you is that as a cooperative, we're a mission-based lender. When we focus on the whole concept of what we can do to make a difference for the communities that we actually serve and support. And we look at ways to go ahead and enhance our overall mission within those communities. So we have programs that are specifically designed to provide support for community facilities. We'll work with USDA or whatever. It could be a critical access hospital, a walk-in health clinic. It could be a public building in terms of maybe even an art center. Haven't seen too many of those, but I have seen some multifamily housing type stuff. We'll work in that space to do whatever we can to help support the community. More broadly speaking, we also look at ways to partner with others to make a difference. Because at the end of the day, we're a senior lender. So that's our focus, is to do senior loans. And I don't know how many of you know about the lending business, but it means you want a fully collateralized type of credit, and you hope to get paid back, or actually don't hope you want to be paid back. And so we don't do as well with the equity side. But we recognize the importance of equity, because at the end of the day, you need startup capital, and you have to be able to build your business over time. So we have investments in a rural business investment company, which its sole purpose is to provide equity financing for businesses in rural America. We have another fund that we've invested in the Midwest called the Midwest Growth Partner Fund. That's about a $40 million fund. The other one was $150 million. And that's designed to support actually any type of rural business, from startup all the way through, it could be technology innovation and so on and so forth. I think that probably summarizes it pretty well. I actually joined CoBank about 4 years ago. Prior to that, I spent 25 years with the Farm Credit Administration as the regulator for the farm credit system. So CoBank is part of the bigger farm credit system family. It's about $250 billion for farm credit system in total. And one of the things I did when I was at the Farm Credit Administration, my role was to be the director of the policy shop. And I don't know how many people know about regulatory agencies, and I realize you're not much into the rules stuff, and that's cool. But the reality is that a regulatory agency has two fundamental line functions, right? So those guys that go out and do examinations, which I did for a long period of time, and credit reviews, and make sure that every dollar is actually worth a dollar. It's reported on the books, which is important. And the other part I did in my job was my second role I did when I left there was actually in charge of the policy shop. And that's where you actually write the rules. And one of the things we always tried to have the farm credit system do, because we were both not only safety and soundness, but also mission lender, was to find ways they could actually add and increase the flow of capital to rural America. Because one of the observations we always have is, yeah, when you're a well-established business, yeah, you can get all the capital you want. But I think kind of to your point, Greg, earlier in your presentation, it's really how do you find the ways to support the new businesses, the new ideas in rural America? And what can you do to make the communities more successful to actually have the economic vitality that's so important for their continued success? That's a place that people want to live, where young people feel they actually have a career and have a chance to actually have the communities that they really want. And it's a tough question. So we started a program that when I was at the FCA called the Investments in Rural America, and really pushed the farm credit system and by extension to find ways to make that outreach. Some of it's been successful and some of it hasn't, but we've been trying to find ways to do kind of, I think, the difficult things in rural America. So with that, I could spend hours talking about CoBank or myself, but I'll just stop there and let the next speaker go.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Next, I'll introduce you to Brett Narlinger over here on the end. He heads Mercury's sales organization, which focuses on creating new partnerships with point-of-sale developers and resellers, and compelling the sales and boarding process for the referred merchants. He was most recently the Executive Vice President of Sales and a co-founding executive of Bank of America Merchant Services, the largest merchant acquirer in the United States today. Prior to that, he spent 15 years with First Data in various leadership roles, overseeing all enterprise and national portfolio accounts. Today, he oversees sales operations, large account acquisition, partner recruitment, and partner merchant retention. His specialty is the development of new markets that allow for Mercury's continuation of its double-digit growth. Brett, thank you for joining us today. Could you tell us a little bit about how you're increasing the creative capital in rural communities?
So we go from my intro to that. That's a tough one. So simply put, and let me just back up a little bit. I grew up in Colorado. I've been here since I was 3 years old. I rarely admit that I'm from New Jersey, but so be it. So when I hit here, I made a decision probably after high school. I never wanted to leave, ever. And I was going to raise my kids here. I grew up in Parker, and I said, I'm going to find a way to make that happen. And I made a career here, locating and being a part of First Data that was here, moving over to BAMS, and then looking at Mercury, and really looking for companies that could find a way to grow, innovate, and be creative inside of its community. Obviously, our big focus has been with Mercury, how do you create something really special and do something really cool to invest back in community, invest back in people, and essentially bring the Colorado lifestyle back into your business. And so Mercury was created purely in that vein. We had a pair of brothers who said, how do we go out and create something special in an industry we know is going to change and evolve, but do so with our morals, do so with our experience, do so with our energy of the outdoors and around Colorado, and see if we can do something really cool. And so Mercury was created in Durango just about 10 years ago, and we just recently sold that company for around $2 billion. So it's been an exciting rail and something I'm excited about. And what's fun is you go to Durango, and I was having this story here earlier, that every time you are in Durango and people ask you where you're from and what do you do and do you work for Mercury, it's just such a part of the community up there. And we have done such an amazing job of partnering with Fort Lewis and bringing that back into the community and really seeing that community thrive and grow. We have a video. Do we want to put that up now? Is that okay? I'd like to show this. This is a little bit about our building.
It's really hard to stand here today without thinking of where Mercury came from. This building is the physical manifestation of the success we've done in both the industry and the people and the great energy that we've done to make it a reality. So thank you for all of that.
The poster child for me, as I've traveled to communities across Colorado, has been Mercury and what you have done here. Because you have answered the question whether we can actually produce high-paying jobs in this economy by saying resoundingly, yes, we can do it.
Durango has never had a company that started and grown this fast to this size, right? And if Durango can do it, right? Can't La Junta do it? Can't Craig do it? You look around the state of Colorado, it shows that any rural community with the right ideas and the right leadership can step up and really create a meaningful enterprise that changes everybody's lives.
1, 2, 3.
You guys are a very important example and microcosm of what we can do across the entire state of Colorado.
So that was just a couple months ago, and Matt Taylor, who you guys saw on there, our CEO from Ohio, went to Fort Lewis, decided he wanted to stay in Durango, worked at a local restaurant, and one of the Katz brothers said, "You seem like a pretty smart guy. You want to come join us?" He was our 8th employee, and we're approaching 1,000 now. So again, we have those stories all over Durango where we've been able to give back to the people, and we continue to have this great synergistic relationship with the community. It's been absolutely fantastic, and I get to stay here, so.
Thank you, Brett. Lastly, I'd like to introduce to you John Pitek. John Pitek is currently the Chief Marketing Officer for Jab Broadband, based in Denver. Jab Broadband is the nation's largest provider of wireless high-speed internet service. Jab focuses on towns and rural areas in the digital divide that are underserved by wireline providers. John is a hands-on, results-driven, with a diverse background in consumer and B2B sales and marketing, as well as technology development both domestically and internationally. He has held senior positions in telephony, internet infrastructure, software, cable television, and consumer products companies from VC-funded startups to Fortune 100 companies. Thank you, John, for joining us. Could you tell us a little bit about your background and share with us a little bit about how you're creating creative capital in rural communities?
Yeah, absolutely. And we got a few slides here, but we could just leave it on that one for right now. All the stuff you've been hearing this morning about how internet access creates jobs, how this pace, the stuff Bob Rice was talking about that was absolutely amazing, is all happening. And, you know, and I'm listening to, as Greg here was talking about Fargo, I'm like, Fargo, that's huge compared to the markets we actually work in. And probably by the same thing, by a show of hands, anybody ever heard of Jab Broadband? Oh, a couple. I'll actually take you through. We actually operate under a lot of other brands, but our target market is really the digital divide. It's wireless internet service provider, so it's microwave technology. In that space, when you think about it, there's not a negative reason why the big providers don't go into these towns to build. It doesn't make economic sense for them. So to put fiber in the ground, to trench it, to even just upgrade their systems to deliver DSL, when you're sitting here in Denver, you'll see a CenturyLink ad that says, what are you going to do with your gig? And we heard about Longmont putting in a gig, which is awesome. The customers we sell to mainly, I mean, they've got maybe 512K, maybe a meg worth of DSL. But why does that matter? Can't you still do everything you want to do? 70% of the traffic on the internet is video. So when you're in that market, you don't get to watch Netflix. It's not just spinning for a little bit, it never connects. You don't get to, and one of my neighbors told me the best story. Her daughter had recently a baby about 6 months ago, and they're up near Steamboat, and they work at Steamboat, but they live in a cabin a little further out. So they have to use satellite TV, and they have satellite internet from Dish Network. Now, satellite internet, it's a solution for out in these markets, but there's a latency. When you ping this thing all the way to space, there's a latency that doesn't allow you to do video. And she said, you know, the worst thing for me is I don't get to see my grandbaby on Skype. And that's the residential side of it. And then on the business world, it's really about being able to run those businesses, have those jobs, provide that education out in those markets. So this slide here may help you a little bit to understand who we are, and I'll give you a heads up, but I won't tell you our new name. We currently operate under 6 brands. Why would we do that? Jab came together over 100 acquired acquisitions out there. So we have over 175,000 customers in 14 states, and we are growing dramatically, you know, pretty much every single month. And with that, they kind of consolidated under 6 main brands. But you know, it's coming to a single company, single brand, actually announced to the employees on Tuesday. So you may have heard of Digis in Utah or Skybeam in Colorado, probably not Rhino in Oklahoma and T6 in Illinois and Prairie iNets out in Iowa. And it's a wireless technology. So, you know, like we talked about, we call it bringing true high-speed internet to the homes and businesses in underserved rural communities. You know, and it's education. There's got a lot of stories about schools Just you think about it, we take it for granted in the larger cities that your kids have access to the internet. Healthcare, we have customers that provide rural healthcare with rural imaging, rural drug testing, and and energy is the next one, but in energy exploration, people get hurt. And you don't have those hospitals and everything out there that you need that support. So we've got clients that do that. It really comes down to that, economic growth. High-speed internet out here, absolutely. Anybody recognize that? Probably not. It's not a big enough picture. That's actually Delta, Colorado. And these other pictures here to kind of I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but what you have is on the house, you have a small dish that looks just like a satellite TV dish. It points at one of those vertical bars you see there that look a lot like a cellular wireless tower. And those towers interconnect with the circular antennas you see that ultimately take you to the internet. What's interesting is, and we kind of use this as a controversial way of marketing, is microwaves actually travel faster than light in fiber. So we are actually faster than fiber in our technologies. But what's happening that this technology, and I'll talk a little bit about Colorado here, why is this technology suddenly all the buzz? If you go to the internet and search wireless internet service provider, you're going to see PC Magazine articles and all that. Well, we benefited from, it's been around, 30, 40 years. I remember being in college in the 80s and seeing these type of dishes on the, going building to building and talking about the data transmission that was occurring. Cellular technology, LTE, 4G technologies, all that technology investment is causing us to get the same benefit for being able to do fixed point. So the difference is you're able to get that high-speed internet because you're hitting a tower that's about a mile away, 3 miles away, in your town. These are some of the biggest cities we support in Colorado. That's actually the top 30, and then there's 219 more in there. You notice you're going to see some things around Denver and so forth, and there's areas around Castle Rock where there's not as good coverage from the wireline provider. We do employ 210 employees in small town Colorado, and what you're seeing there is just a couple photos from our call center in Loveland that has over 100 employees. So definitely able to create jobs and kind of live in those same communities. But I think the bottom line for us is what we're bringing to that community is something we take for granted. Internet faster than a meg, actually being able to watch video, and actually all the things that Bob talked about that we're talking about in development and so forth, kind of even that dream of, I love the idea that some kid educated in a small town out in the eastern plains of Colorado could, if they wanted to, after college, come back to that town and be a coder for Google in Silicon Valley out of that small town. Why do you have to kind of move to that big urban city, which is a little different than some of the earlier discussions we were having, but that's really the world we serve and kind of how we bring, innovation to the small town.
Well, thanks, gentlemen. We get to turn it over as a panel. So I'll be serving as moderator. We have about 25 minutes. We have 3 guys that are doing really, really interesting, cutting-edge stuff. So we want your questions. So if you have a question, come on up. Let us know where you're from, and let us know if you're going to direct that question to Andrew, to Brett, or to John. And then I kind of reserve the right to, hey, if the question doesn't make sense or it's not good, we'll say, hey, chat about that afterwards, and we'll just try to keep the conversation going. So fellas, your job is to crisp answers, because we got a lot of questions that we want to pull from the crowd. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. Rapid fire. It's like the hot seat on SportsCenter. All right, anybody? We got one right here. Thank you. All right, well, I'll ask one while we got the time. So how about a Brett? Oh, yes.
My question really is, our top priority is enhanced broadband, not just within our town, but in rural communities like Glen Haven and Drake, Pinewood Springs, that were all hit by the flood. So it looks to me like I have a panel here that has the technology and has the capital. So if you take a shot at that, how can rural communities really not only adopt this technology, but put it in place from the capital?
I can kick it off from the wireless side. I mean, the big thing to us is just looking at it and saying, your support from that community. We have communities in, like, for example, in Iowa that come to us and say, hey, we've been challenged by this. What can you do to help us out? What we kind of go back to that community with is, well, let's talk a little bit about, you know, what the footprint looks like, how many subscribers are there, and, you know, if there is that interest and we can gauge that, it's a pretty easy business case for us to come in and say, okay, we can put up that technology, we can interconnect to the rest of our network and make it all work for you. So I think there's a great opportunity out there to work cooperatively, whether that's giving us the right to put that tower, you know, put an antenna like you saw in those pictures up on a water tower. Iowa, they go up on grain towers for farmers. Sometimes they're up on the hillside. Now, when you're driving home tonight, you're going to be seeing them all over the place and go, wow, they're like speckling the land. But, you know, it really is working with us to show us that there's really an interest from the community in having it.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question.
I'm just going to add on that if I could.
Yep.
Sure, go for it, Andrew.
So, you know, with respect to the financing for the community, because that's obviously a really important part at times, and probably most of the time actually, they're looking for a way to actually get the project financing to get whatever they want to get done. In this case, broadband. We actually have initiated a public-private partnership with USDA, and with the whole goal of actually being able to partner with the communities where necessary, USDA, and where we could come in with in essence, the private part of the financing. And so what we're trying to do is find ways to have creative solutions to sometimes to the financing solution. And then we also have, depending upon how the structure is, the ability to work with equity providers. I talked about the Rural Business Investment Company. We also have another fund that we partner with, which we don't actually put money into, but it's called the Rural Investment Opportunity Fund. And its sole purpose is to bring to attract other type of capital to equity capital to rural America. So we think that could be used either in a small fashion for a small community that maybe needs an installation like JAB, that for, you know, not a large number of actual customers, because that's the challenge, you know, for Verizon to run the lines in there. They have to have a bigger base to make it economic. From you know, even a large installation, it could be you know, a new type of manufacturing plant or whatever the case may be in a rural area, and we have the capacity to kind of go across the spectrum. And so I can give you some contact information at the end of this. If there are someone we want to partner with, you have a project that's kind of ready to come together, let's start to talk.
I was going to throw in one extra piece on there. Just if you want to look onto a federal government website, there's a program called Connect America. If you're familiar with phone universal funding that allowed phone to get out to the rural communities, those funds are being shifted into internet build, and about $4 trillion next year of funding to get companies to build out into those rural areas. So when you go on to Connect America, you can see what the government categorizes as underserved, and if we go in and say, yes, we can serve that, we can access the funds to actually construct the infrastructure and operate it.
All right, I think we got one up here, Frank.
Sorry. Oh, there we go. Brett, I have a question for you on when you talk about your company in Durango and talent and youth and kind of playing off of what Greg was talking about in his portion about infusing the arts and infusing the different parts of the community. Can you talk about how that works with your company and what you guys are doing maybe in Durango and how you guys continue to maybe try to attract the future workforce and the direction of the future workforce?
Sure, I'd love to. It's interesting, when you look at Durango, your first question is, can you attract talent? Can you get people to move their lives and really have faith that that's going to be where they go? Because if something happens and the bottom falls, you're in Durango, okay? And there's not a back door, and there's a whole list of other companies that service, especially this industry. I would say that a big portion of what we do is attract really amazing talent, and people follow. And we have 3 folks on our executive team that live in Durango that have Harvard MBAs that came and busted out of models to say, I want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of that community. You wouldn't recognize any of the 3 as being as such. In fact, this morning my CTO sent me a note saying I got to go take my 74 VW van down to the service shop because I'm hanging out at Moab all weekend, so I'll be a little late. That's the culture we have. And we had to give him grief for about an hour. The word Spicoli came out a few times, but that's what we do. And so with that comes this broad scope of let's bring more, and they follow, and they see the energy that we're bringing to it. We're constantly investing back in the community. When we were in a small company, we couldn't afford to put money out, but we could afford to let our folks spend time in the community. So we started Mercury Gives, and it wasn't around donations. We couldn't afford it, but we could afford to have people go out into the community and invest hours. Last year alone, we had 20,000 hours spent from our employees back in the community that we paid for. We gave them paid time off to make that happen. And we continually see that cultural shift and see that happen. And in the building, what you didn't see is that we've got we've got wellness with massage, we've got bike rooms, we've got a kayak room because you can actually float to work. These are just things that are important to us, and we think it draws the talent in, and frankly it keeps them there. It's amazing how many folks and how many stories we have of, I'm the 11th employee, I'm the 20th employee, and they don't want to see anything happen. They want to stay there and be invested, and people are following and seeing that energy come. So and I'll be honest, the other side of it is we can't keep up with the growth. We're having massive growth, and so what did we do? We partnered with Denver and said we need to see if we can maybe create a feeder in Denver. So now we have 200-300 employees down in the tech center, and we're constantly going back and forth. So again, it's really embracing that, and it's really fun because a lot of folks came to Denver saying, okay, I can't make the commitment to Durango, but Denver maybe, and they can't get away from Durango now. They're like, I'm going up there. I gotta finish the swing. So that's. Huh? There's a lot of, and so there's a lot of folks who are going, that looks pretty nice up there. And what you didn't see is the animus that runs right behind the building. And again, I'll give you a good example of the culture of our business. The executive committee, all of us sit and look over the parking lot. All of our sales teams and our customer support teams, they look over the river. And that's the way we run. And that type of thing just kind of feeds upon itself, and it draws people in because it's different. It's a cultural change. It's bringing people who are interested in the outdoors, bringing people in the attitude and the culture, and doing something different, innovative, and better, and being able to find a company that matches that desire. It's pretty cool.
All right, let's go back to the crowd. Who has a question? All right, thanks for being brave and courageous.
Hi, I'm Lee Wheeler-Berliner with the Colorado Workforce Development Council. This morning, this question is for you, Brett. This morning we talked about infrastructure as something being invested in. I'm curious to know what challenges you've seen in Durango around infrastructure and how the company overcame them as you did grow.
We're kind of the poster child for infrastructure stretching. We started in a small little, I don't know if it was in the video, but we started in a small little 1,000-square-foot facility in Durango, and as we grew, as fast as we grew, the infrastructure couldn't support it. We actually took over what is referred to as the Durango Tech Center. We operated in 8 different buildings. Anheuser-Busch was in the middle, and then we surrounded them. And we frankly started to grow out of it, and we also didn't see it embracing the culture that we were bringing. So what you saw was us saying, how do we make an investment? We found this plot of land. We said, we're going to build this. And what I also don't think showed up is that we just got our gold certification as a LEED certification for that building. 75% of that building was built with recycled material. We've got 40% of the water spend we had in our old facilities because of what we did in that building. We're thrilled to be a part of that, but we just decided we needed to make an investment. And so what you saw was us coming together and making that happen. That got happened pretty darn fast, and you just adapt. We made it work.
All right, we've got one in the back.
This isn't working again. There it is. Brett, it's just an observation. I'm Carrie Linker with Morgan County Economic Development. You talked about your investment in Durango, kind of on the western part of Colorado. You made an investment in the Denver area. We're just going to invite you to the Eastern Plains to connect all the dots throughout the state. So anytime you're ready, just come to the Eastern Plains. We'd love to have you.
Just keep drawing the string?
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I had your question.
So, sorry, I got a lot of questions. I'm not very bright, but the question I would have for you, for the panel is, if you're in somewhere in rural Colorado right now, and you're having to put together your plan. And your board of directors is coming to you, and they're saying, hey, so what have you done for us lately? You know, what are we going to do? How are we going to make this happen in something like what they're doing in Fargo or something like what they're doing in Durango? What would be this group? I think the unique group. You got the financing, you got the infrastructure, you got the company, and you've got the inspiration. And so, what would this group say? You know, if you're going to put together an action plan for you know, community X in rural Colorado, what would that look like right now?
I'll take a stab at it.
And
again,
give some advice.
Yeah, so I thought Greg had a phenomenal opening. I was inspired. I hope you were too. And the reason I was inspired is what we're trying to do is tap into innovation. We're trying to tap into the spirit, trying to tap into something different than just chasing a business plan that results in a really big business and a really cool exit plan. That it was really focused on how to get behind them, I think was your word, and focus on the bright spots. I can tell you that's a big part of what we do all the time is what do we do well, what do we put some attention towards, and just continue to support that. I thought that message was spot on. It's exactly what happened with our company, and frankly, I'm seeing more and more companies inspiration come out of just pushing behind that, focus on the right things, not focus on the financial side at first, not focus on how do I quickly get to an exit plan, but really push that innovation through the business and then find someone to finance it.
Them. I think a lot of times what happens is these amazing, talented people burn out. And they don't actually want more money. They want the resources that money provides. So what would it look like to gift a second, third, fourth home and say, hey, go to my family's resort in the off-season or whatever? I'm so blessed that there's folks in my community that are like, Greg, you haven't slept much. I'm like, no. Like, you have to go. And you need to go rest. But I can't afford a nice hotel, so they give me their lake cabin. And that makes such a difference. So I bet on the young teachers, I bet on the young faith-based folks, the YMCA officials, the youth coaches, anybody under 30 that's on the verge of burnout. I'd find a way to love them and support them and give them the resources that money provides. They don't need money, they need the resources that money provides. I'd remove the barriers for them to do great work and just bet on teachers.
Well said.
All right, well that's good. We got maybe some teachers in the room. So last thing, I get to ask last question. That was what I was told. If I did this panel, I got to ask last question. So I got a really hard one for each of you guys. And we don't have a lot of time left, but what is your hope for the people you serve? Take away the dollar signs, take away, loosen up the tie a little bit. But what drives you when you get at the why?
So we've abandoned ties a long time ago. So ours is all about people. It just is. I mean, everything we do, we don't run around. I know there were titles on the board, but we don't run around with titles inside of our company. We look constantly for how do we innovate. We open it up. We have our own version of Shark Tanks, and we don't care who comes in. Come in, present an idea, and we pick the best one, and we go after it, and we let them lead it. And I don't care where you are in the company. I don't care what your title is. We'll all sit there, and no one will know who's who, and that's how we do it. And I, again, don't count on the folks that you'd normally expect to bring those ideas. We constantly are getting things, and we're coordinating and working with our school. Fort Lewis has been a great partner of ours. We're constantly working with the professors and the teachers saying, don't go down this path. Here's a different way for us to think about things. We want to get people who are interested in the arts. We don't care that you have a business degree. We don't care. We want someone who is thinking outside the box. We want people who don't know there's a box. And again, just constantly feeding that inside the company. We get on our conference calls and our all hands and all the above, and Matt Taylor and myself and a bunch of others, we'll recognize almost every voice on the phone, and we'll address them by first names. There's no hierarchy, and I know that's hard, and I know that's not something we're used to, but it's pretty special when it happens, and you can see tremendous faith and loyalty in the company. You see them wanting to push and grow the business, and we've been very successful because of it, and I can tell you that a lot of the other companies that I've been involved in and a lot of companies I've invested in, that's what I'm shooting for, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing young people come out just different, and I think you said it perfectly. They're not the generation that wants to be fed by wealth, by money, by the paycheck. They want to make a difference, they want to see something grow, and they want to be invested in something. So we're all about people, that's it.
Well, and it's interesting, Brett, as your company was acquired by a Cincinnati-based firm, it sounds like they were going to try to pull you towards them, but they're recognizing what's happening in Colorado, what's happening in Durango,
Yeah.
what's happening in Denver, and it sounds like jobs are actually coming this way.
Yeah, they are.
So did you acquire them?
It's there is this belief now that's occurring that, hey, what's making you so special, and what it isn't the fact that we did this or we did this. What's making us special is our culture and our people and the way we treat people and the way we talk on the phone to people, and the way in which people want to reinvest in the business. And so they're starting to say that we call it secret sauce, and they can't name it anything else because they can't point dollars and cents to it. And they're saying, that's secret sauce. That's what makes you different. And so maybe we need to start transforming our culture. And we're actually starting to see jobs move to Colorado from Cincinnati, which is the company that's bought us, and that's within 3 months. So again, we like to believe that we acquired them, and they're gonna bend our way. It's a balancing act for a while.
Hey, John, let's hear from you. You're on the road a lot. Let's hear what you're learning.
Yeah, I think for us is, and I'm going to kind of take it from our customer's perspective, what we see for them is just that ability to connect them to all those experiences the internet provides. If it's on the consumer side, whether it's seeing your grandbaby, on Skype, or, getting to watch Breaking Bad, all the seasons on Netflix that you've never seen because you're kind of out in that rural market there. And from the business side, being able to create an entrepreneurial business sitting in a small town. I mean, we get to go up to the mountains for the weekend here when we come out of Denver and sit in traffic on I-70, and you realize, man, who's nuts here? These guys are up there 7 days a week, and that opportunity to kind of live that alternate, a different lifestyle than we're used to. Just kind of that living the dream.
Excellent. Andrew?
Well, I think, from my perspective, I know what we want to do. My focus is what can we do to support rural areas to have the same access to capital, the same type of opportunities that would exist elsewhere, and how can we help that conversation occur, and then how can we help support the financing, not tomorrow, not today, but for the long term. So the way I look at it is, we're we're mission focused. I'm personally mission focused. How do we continue to go ahead and have that conversation? And we all know that rural America has gone through a tremendous amount of change. I went to University of California, Davis, and they were talking about the change and the depopulation and all of the issues around the mechanization of agriculture, all very important to compete globally, but how you still make sure that the rural areas have all the same access to capital, the same relevancy, which they really need to have, and how can you play a material, helpful role in doing that? And that's through time, and that's how we look at it, and we're constantly trying to find new and creative ways. I'm not smart enough to start some of these other companies. I recognize that, so my job is to be that consistent support for rural America, and that's what we do.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Colorado's lucky to have you, and just hope you keep after it, because it's probably a lot of miles, a lot of hard work. And I'd ask all of you to join me in giving these guys a real big round of applause.